Last summer, while on retreat, our group was invited to take an individual bike ride for a spiritual exercise. I started pedaling down Brown Street, turning on Route 9 towards Wells, when I began to notice signs along the road which read, "Closed, keep out, no trespassing." I was stopped dead in my tracks. It suddenly occurred to me those were the signs I had worn most of my life. In order to survive growing up in a household where some sort of abuse occurred nearly every day, I created an emotional box I could crawl inside and become invisible. The tools I used to build my box were fear, that served as my bodyguard, preventing me from ever taking a risk; guilt, that kept my box weighed down like a heavy anchor, so I was forced to remain in the same spot; shame, that kept my box very quiet because it silenced my voice; self-judgment, that daily reminded me I had no value, so I would continue to feel discarded and of no use. These 4 tools successfully worked together to keep me hidden away in the darkness so no one could get close to me. I stayed inside my protective box for over 40 years until the summer of 2003 when my father died. Following the memorial service, my siblings and I attended a luncheon at my sister's church in southern Indiana. I really wanted no part of it because I found it difficult and uncomfortable to be sociable after a funeral. Already feeling on edge, the chatter of people at the table and the clanking of the silverware in the kitchen were almost more than I could stand. So I slipped away and went upstairs to the sanctuary. Sitting alone in the front of the church, I heard this faint voice whisper the words, "Follow me." I turned around to see if someone had walked in, but no one was there. A few seconds later, I heard it again, "Follow me." It was then I realized the words were coming from my own inner voice. I wasn't quite sure what had just happened. All I knew was for the first time in my life, at the age of 46, I felt a little bit of peace. The following Sunday, when I was back in Indianapolis, I decided to attend a worship service at my friend's church. Sheila had told the pastor, Reverend Andrea Leiniger, about my father's death, so after the service she introduced me. Andrea greeted me and asked, "How are you doing?" Without hesitation, I replied, "Not very well." I was taken aback. I was shocked to hear my own voice give an honest answer. You see, in order to keep my box intact, my whole life I always responded with a pat, safe answer, "I'm fine." And each time that would end the conversation. Then I would go on living the lie. But this time I opened the door just a tiny crack. Andrea offered to meet with me to talk, and I agreed. Later that day, I imagined one session would probably do it for me, to be able to maintain my "I'm fine" attitude. At our meeting a few days later, Andrea lighted a candle and encouraged me to think of the candle as a symbol for the light of Christ. That day and the next 4 years of counseling, I lighted my candle, allowing Jesus' light to shine in my apartment and in my soul. That was the beginning of my search for the truth that could set me free from my bondage and my darkness that had plagued me for so long. Learning to trust another person was the first step out of the box. Over the next many months, I began to find my own voice, to at last expose the secrets buried deep within. As each secret surfaced and I felt afraid and despairing, I repeated over and over again the words of Jesus, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." We, God, Andrea, and I, all worked together to dismantle the box, one secret at a time, until fear, guilt, shame, and self-judgment no longer had any power over me. I remember well that incredible day when the last piece of the box was destroyed and God's grace flooded my soul. Learning to trust this gracious God was part of my healing journey. As a child, God was portrayed as the ultimate judge, showing no love or compassion, rather a God to be feared. During my road to recovery, I sensed the need for spiritual reinforcement. I started attending church on a regular basis for the first time in my life. I participated in retreats, I prayed, and sought fellowship with other people of faith. I accepted the challenge to join the mission committee and later became the chairperson. I felt the desire to give back, to help others find the light that saved me. The committee and congregation began working together to provide food and clothing to people living on the streets of Indianapolis, to organize a disaster response team, to assist victims of Hurricane Katrina who made their way to Indiana, and to donate backpacks, supplies, and shoes to school children. Growing deeper and deeper in faith, in 2005, I joined 8 women from our church and traveled to Maine to participate in a spiritual retreat being held in Kennebunk in Andrea and Harold's home. Even though each retreatant was in a different place on our faith journey, we all knew that God was the true source of our joy. During the retreat, we attended a worship service at Church on the Cape. There we experienced overflowing joy. People were filled with the Holy Spirit. Words of welcome, handshakes, and smiles greeted us at the door. We listened to beautiful music that flowed out to the streets, and a heartfelt message was spoken by Pastor Ruth. I felt as though I had traveled to heaven, and I did not want to leave this sacred space. Each year as I returned to Maine for the retreat, I could not wait to worship at Church on the Cape, but I soon realized that my once-a-year visits were just not enough. Those years of listening to God and trusting God gave me the courage to explore new possibilities for my life. So in April of 2014, I decided to take early retirement from my job with the Indiana Supreme Court. The following month, I moved to Maine, leaving behind dear friends, family, and everything familiar so that I could become a member of Church on the Cape. As a wonderful church family, you instantly offered love, friendship, acceptance, and support. Your willingness to help was overwhelming. Jane and David Smith and several others wrote reference letters, made phone calls, and introduced me to people to help me find employment, which, by the way, was successful. Invitations for dinners, outings, and visits came from every direction. In fact, shortly after my arrival, I was invited to join the breakfast group at Bentley's. Now that was an experience. When I learned about the Walk for Fun group, started by Bob and Judy Metcalf and David Emery, I thought that would be another good way to meet people and get some exercise. However, I soon learned the group offered much more than a workout. Twice a month on Saturday mornings, we walk, talk, and share our faith. Pastor Ruth thought I might be interested in becoming a volunteer for Bon Appetit, and now once a month I join others from our church to serve meals to families and individuals in need. As I turned onto Route 1 to head back to Kennebunk to conclude my bike ride assignment for our retreat, one last sign drew me in. It read, "All are welcome." And I realized God had taken me full circle by leading me to Church on the Cape, where I have certainly been welcomed by all and have been given the opportunity to welcome others with the truth that sets us free. Thank you for allowing me to share my journey of faith with all of you this morning.